This is a mix I'm using for growing our hostas in. I made up this mix. What this is it's about 5 parts bark mulch to about 1 part perlite and about 1 part peat moss. This bark mulch is definitely on the larger side. I've had trouble getting a hold of this. I prefer bark mulch that's about half the size or so. It would definitely work better. It would be easier to handle, and it would provide a better consistency and better drainage to the mix. But for some reason in this area of the country, this time of the year in the summer, I was going to have to order it and pay a bunch of freight on it, so we decided to settle on this and see how it worked. There's also some earthworm castings for adding some micronutrients. There's some immediate release fertilizer in there. I normally use controlled release, but since we're already later in the summer, we're going on August 1st today, I didn't want to have any controlled release in there. And there's about 2 tablespoons of lime per cubic foot or so, which this was a much larger pile, and that worked out to a few cups of lime or so of garden lime. I used a very fine garden lime. So one thing, if you make a mix like this, is the peat and the bark mulch are fairly hydrophobic, so they definitely need some concentrated effort of stirring and wetting to get them wet in the first place. And then you don't want to ever let that get real dry in a container, or you're going to find it just about impossible to get them wet again. So it would probably be preferable, if you're making a soil like this in any volume, to mix in a commercial wetting agent. And I would probably look for one and do that next time, just to make things easier, and more so to prevent from having any problems with re-wetting if any of the containers that it occupies dry out a little bit. I'm pretty good with staying on top of my watering, so I'm not too worried about my stuff drying out, but we still could have stuff dry out on the surface. So that's just a caution. And if you have the choice and you have a smaller bark mulch, that definitely would be the more correct material for this mix. And I think you'd probably be a little less likely to run into problems with re-wetting if you had the smaller, proper bark mulch. So far, what I've seen from the stuff that's been planted in this mix is that I've seen a few plants that have really hit on the smaller side of things in terms of roots, that they didn't have as established of a root ball. I've seen those they've looked to me like they've been on a little bit on the wet side for that. And however, all the plants that I've had, they came from liners, which are about 1 inch by 1.5 inches by 2 1/4. Most of those are normally really well rooted, and the majority of those have seemed to take to this just fine and be happy with the moisture level in it. Hostas generally use a lot of water because of their big leaves. They transpire a lot of water, and we've had some really, for Wisconsin, it's been quite warm weather. It's been mid to upper 80s a lot of days, and I say that to people online, and they're like, well, that's nothing compared to here. Well, we are in the north part of the country, so we're just not used to it here. But it's been great for growing, and like I said, the majority of things have been fine. I've gone a little bit lighter on the water on some of the stuff that I knew was newer plants and such that just didn't have as strong of a root ball on them.